This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
You can let your self-doubt crush you, pin you in a corner, and never let you live your life the way you really want to. Never feel as good about yourself as you really want to. Or you can learn the techniques needed to crush it. In her book, Corrina Thurston lays out numerous tips and techniques used to boost your self-esteem, manage your anxieties, crush your self-doubt, and gain real, lasting confidence. Through her unique experiences, she uses examples to highlight how these techniques work, how powerful they can be, and why they're so important. You're stronger than you realize. You have more value, importance, and talent than you give yourself credit for. Don't let your self-doubt sabotage you. Don't let it get in the way of creating and grabbing onto opportunities in your life. Don't let it stop you from doing the things you want to do, standing up for yourself, or feeling good about yourself. Valeria Teles interviews Corrina Thurston, the author of How to Crush Self-Doubt and Gain Real Confidence. Corrina Thurston is a professional wildlife artist, author, consultant, and speaker working in Vermont, USA. Watch her TEDx talk, Why We Should Teach Gratitude in School. Meet Corrina at CorrinaThurston.com. Here's the interview with Corrina Thurston.
In your own words, who is Corrina Thurston?
I'm a wildlife artist, and I'm also a speaker, and I do some consulting, and I'm an author of 3 books, and I'm someone who I love animals and nature, and I just love trying to help people in any way that I can. That purpose, I call it a purpose. What would you call that? What do you do today? I agree with that. I think, I fell chronically ill when I was only 18 years old, and I was mostly bedridden for over 6 years. And before that, I really didn't have any intention to spend my life trying to help other people or do artwork or do any of the things that I do now. And it was really the silver lining of everything that horrible, that happened to me, is that this artwork and the writing and the being able to really touch people's lives came out of it, and I think that was sort of a destiny thing, it just sort of happened.
Do you believe, sometimes I ask the question about this idea that we go through challenges so we can learn these deeper lessons, that we can find our purpose. Do you believe in such a thing? Yeah, I think so. I mean, what I went through, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Right. Yeah. But also, it gave me such a different perspective. And that perspective really changed my life and the way that I do things and the way that I see the world and the way that I connect with people. I don't think I would connect with people the same way at all if I hadn't gone through those things. In a way, what you're saying, that everything's connected. There's nothing that's separate, right? And another question I have for you is, when finding purpose, what are the signs we have finally found our purpose? There's something someone told me about once that is like, I forget how they worded it. It's the laugh cry response. You mentioned that where, in the book. Yeah, so there was this woman who was trying to decide, if she wanted to do her artwork full time. And I was asking her questions and trying to help her figure that out. And she was talking about the laugh cry response and how
it made her elated, to think about doing it, and also petrified. And I was like, that's great. That's where you want to be. That's how you know you're on the edge of something really transformational. Is that it just makes you so excited and also nervous.
I'll be asking you more questions about comfort zone and fear, and lots of other topics in a moment. But before that, talk to me about real confidence. What does it look like or feel like to be real confident?
I think when you're really confident and you're in tune with yourself and you can own who you are, it's a full sense of being. And I think it means that you are the same person no matter where you go, no matter who you're around, no matter what happens. You have the same views, you have the same inspirations and aspirations, anything that is you stays the same. You might talk a little differently when you're in different situations, but really the core of who you are is you. You don't try to change for the people around you.
So it's connected to something we call authenticity.
Right.
Yeah.
Just being genuine.
Yes. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. And it has to do with self-knowledge and self-awareness, right, Corrina? Knowing oneself.
Knowing your worth, just knowing that your opinions are your opinions, or whatever it is about yourself that you might have not been super confident about before, that you can stand up and say, this is how I feel.
And that is the journey of ending, as you call it, crushing self-doubt. And would you say that is a journey, really, as I just mentioned?
Oh, yeah.
Or that's a moment in time?
I would say it's a long journey, and it's one that I'm not sure has a full ending. A lot of the stuff in my book is really stuff that you want to continue to practice, throughout your life as you continue.
So it is a journey. Yes, something
definitely.
We are constantly learning. That makes so much sense. You said about self-confidence in your book, you write, don't try to impress anyone. Trying to impress someone is not confidence. And that is so true, isn't it? This idea of trying to be something we are not so we can give this good impression or look good to others. And this is I think it becomes a challenge for people who are empath, they call it, where they try to kind of please everyone. They don't want to hurt them. So what would you say is the balance between honoring yourself, being yourself, and also honoring others?
Well, I talk about in the book, too, learning how to say no. I think it's really, and I think it's really important to know your own limitations. And sometimes that means you're going to have to push past them to know where they are, and I do that with my health, and I do that with my own comfort zone and stuff all the time. You're trying to go outside it a bit and see where those lines really are, because they do shift. They're not always the same. And I think it's important to know that when you're doing the best thing for yourself, you're usually doing the best thing for the people around you as well. Because if you're your best self, they get more out of you, as well. So the people who always try to please other people, which, I was one of them.
Tell me about it.
So, it's okay to say no and to put up those boundaries, and the better you are for yourself and the more self-care you can do, the better you're going to be for all those people around you.
We cannot give what we don't have.
Right. Pour from an empty cup.
Right? Yeah.
It's really hard to do, though, because we get that unnecessary guilt, of saying no.
True. So how do we deal with that? What's the best way from your perspective, Corrina?
Guilt is really tricky. Sometimes you have it and you just don't even realize that's what it is, and I've struggled with guilt a lot in my lifetime, especially being chronically ill. I think people with chronic illnesses or even just injuries or any sort of problem feel a lot of guilt, and they feel like a burden on the people around them. And it's important to recognize when you're feeling that way, stop yourself and kind of think critically. Did I do anything wrong? Because guilt is really about, if you did something wrong. And me falling chronically ill was not my fault, or getting injured or having to cancel plans or something like that. It's not necessarily your fault. And so if you didn't purposefully do something wrong, then, think about that guilt and just sort of tie it up in a bag and toss it over.
I like that. Yeah, that sounds very good to me to do that.
It's easier said than done, but over time, with some of the other techniques, with like positive affirmations and things like that, it really helps to kind of limit that guilt.
Do you believe in the practice of unconditional self-love? Is that realistic?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's the person who we are today, and there's the person that we really want to be. And I'm not sure if that person will ever necessarily completely line up. But I think that our journey in life is to try and get to that place. And if you're not there, if there's little bits and pieces that don't quite fit in, that's totally fine. That's okay. You don't need to be this perfect person. You just need to know that, your scars have reasoning behind them, that you learn these lessons from the things that go wrong. And, I'm not a perfect person every day. I'm not a perfect mom every day. I'm not a perfect wife every day. I'm not a perfect businesswoman every day. But I know that I'm spending my life trying to do the things that are best for me and the people around me. And I try to live as much as I can without any regrets.
And also, it's also sounds very simple, this idea of accepting ourselves at this moment by moment, and not kind of trying to hold on to ideas we have about, like you said, what we could be in the future, but just living in the moment. That's like huge to me. In your book, you have so many practices, and you mentioned meditation, which is wonderful for quieting the mind and open up that space. For you, is meditation a spiritual practice?
Yeah, it's funny. Spirituality for me is interesting because I didn't grow up in a religious household or anything like that. And we didn't really ever talk about any type of spirituality. But after I became sick, I guess I became more in tune with some of the energies around me and within my own body. And I think I'm very, nature is very spiritual for me. I love being out in nature, animals, as you can see in my artwork and things.
Beautiful.
And it is a component for a lot of people and for me. And I think you definitely get in tune with something, whatever it is for you. And for me, that spirituality is just trying to find who I am and what I want each moment to moment, and, just kind of utilize those energies around me.
And that's interesting when you say nature and spirituality, you connect them. So I'm wondering, what is it about nature that it's spiritual?
Yeah, I think there's so many types of energies in the world, and they're so strange, and I don't know anything really about them, but I know they're there and I can feel them. And when I'm in nature, I feel like plants, animals, other living things just give off such good energy. And especially this time of year for us, I live in Vermont, and so it's springtime, and we finally have a few flowers and leaves popping up, and the snow is finally gone, hopefully for good. And you just feel this burst of energy, and the sunshine. Just anything outside. I love going for a walk outside, getting the blood flowing. I think that's a good type of energy, and releasing those endorphins, and being outside does that too.
Kind of goes back to that comment I think you made about movement, because life is movement. It's constantly changing. It feels like it. So it might be that. It's
sort of that phrase about, a river, like the water is never the same in the same place. It keeps flowing downward. And, that's our life too, is that you're never in the same place twice. You can never relive moments. And so the moments in the past are done, and the moments in the future are not guaranteed. You don't know what they're going to be like. And so each moment to moment is really critical.
And a few more warm-up questions for you. The next one's about the purpose of the human experience. What do you think that is?
There are so many options.
Yes, right. Possibilities, yeah.
I guess I would say I don't know, and I guess I'm okay with not knowing. But for me, my purpose for life and living really is just to find a way to be content and to help others try to do that as well, whatever that might mean. And so my life has been really chaotic and challenging. And I've been through things that, most people 3 times my age have not been through, and so it's been a really challenging life. And I think learning how to slow down and focus has been really essential for me. And I think the purpose is really just to find what you are meant to do if you can, and go do that thing. Because like I said, the future isn't guaranteed. So You don't want to settle.
Yes, I agree. I love the word content that you used. That kind of, I connect that with inner peace, 2 words I often use. Yeah, that brings peace, right? Not just calm, but the sense of acceptance, of unconditional love.
Right. It's not that every day you're going to be, giggling and having a perfect thing. It's just that you know that you can get through everything, and you know who you are and your core values, and you can really just live your life the best way that you can.
And a few more questions. Success. What is your idea of success these days? What is to be successful to you?
I would say kind of the same thing. Is just learning your purpose and being able to kind of thrive within your own life. I think that is success to me. I don't necessarily equate it with a certain amount of money or anything like that. I find success to be more if you can be content, and if you can live your life and kind of try and live without regrets, like we talked about.
What is your understanding of healing?
Healing is challenging because, I've been chronically ill for 13 years. And for the first 6.5 years, I didn't have a diagnosis, and I was mostly bedridden. And so, I'm still not 100%, even though I've been on treatment for the last 6.5 years. So it's been a very long haul. And when I gave birth last year, I got more sick again for a little while. And so I've been, having even more challenges, and then COVID hit. So, but healing, I think to me, is a very mind and body connected thing. It's very, I don't think you can heal your body if your mind is not ready for it. And I think the opposite might be the same. And so I think it's really important to think of healing as a full body experience, and, really think about like what you're putting in your body and how you're treating yourself. And if you're giving yourself that self-care and the rest that we need, and just the love that you need to give yourself.
You wrote the book, How to Crush Self-Doubt and Gain Real Confidence. 2 initial questions. How did you become a writer? What was the main inspiration and intention of writing your book?
I became a writer. I guess I've always loved writing. That's one of the few things that I've done as a kid that I continue to still, love doing. And the 3 books that I've written, the first 2 were actually for artists based on, how to build your art business and marketing. And those happened because I saw a need for it, and people really cued in on what I was talking about, and it seemed to really help people. So that book, the first book, just sort of flew out of me. My fingers were cramping. I was typing so quickly. And then, artists especially have a really hard time with self-doubt. We're stuck in our studios by ourselves, not socializing. And it's really challenging to put ourselves into our work and then show it to the rest of the world and see what they're going to think. And there's a lot of self-doubt that's really prevalent in that world. And then I started realizing it's just everywhere, and I had really severe self-doubt when I came out of being bedridden for those years because I hadn't socialized in 6 years. And it was just, I had to crawl my way back into society and socializing. And it was really challenging. And I just felt very small. I felt, kind of unattractive and sick, and just inexperienced. And, everyone had experienced all these things and I had not. And for a while, I just thought my perspective wasn't valid because I hadn't been able to do the things that other people had been able to do. And so I got through that, and I learned the techniques in this book, and I really focused on those, and they helped so much. And when I started talking to other people about them, they were saying, you need to get this out there. Right. And I was thinking with my child, okay, I definitely need to teach my children these techniques, and this and that. And then I was like, gosh, that's kind of selfish. Why would I only teach my children? This is pretty prevalent everywhere. I should be teaching more people.
True. So we have 3 books. The first one I just mentioned, How to Crush Self-Doubt and Gain Real Confidence. And you also wrote 2 other books, more for artists and creatives. And the names, How to Build Your Art Business with Limited Time and Energy, and How to Communicate Effectively for artists and creatives. So self-doubt, before that, Corrina, let me ask you this question. How did you become a professional wildlife artist?
It's kind of a funny story just because I hadn't really done artwork before I got sick. And 2 years into being, bedridden and in excruciating chronic pain, for some reason, I don't know what, it's that destiny thing again. I picked up a pencil and a piece of old poster board and I started drawing. And I've always been, drawn, quote, to animals, no pun intended. And I immediately started drawing animals, and it really helped me get through some of that time. And I would start hanging them on the walls, and it proved to myself that I could accomplish something. There was something I could still do. And there was visual proof of it, on the walls. And then I didn't know if I was going to be any good at it or not. And I was stuck in this room. And so I would ask my parents and they would be like, of course it's great. And I'm like, I don't know if I can trust their opinion. They're talking to their chronically ill child, And then once I started putting them out into the world a little bit, people went gaga, and really, really just love it. And it went from there.
So when it comes to self-doubt, you, in your book, you say a lot of self-doubt comes from comparison. So my question is this how self-doubt develops usually? And what are some other causes of self-doubt from your perspective?
I think comparison is definitely a trap we fall into. And we're a social species. We're constantly, looking at each other and, her clothing, his hair,
it's kind of funny, but yeah, you're right.
Different things. And it's a very natural thing to do. Yeah, right. And we do it in school. We do it with sports. We do it with, anything that we grow up with. We're just used to comparing ourselves to others. And so if you take art, for example, and you start drawing and you look at someone else's artwork and you're not as good, or you don't think you're as good, well, that's natural, and it just takes time, and it doesn't really do you any good to compare, because it doesn't matter if you're better or worse than someone else. It doesn't change anything. And I think, self-doubt hardly ever happens alone. Lots of times it's, caused by anxiety or depression or some form of that. And I've dealt with that my whole life for both of those in different ways. And I think when you work on your self-doubt, you have to work on those as well. So there's a lot in the book about techniques to help with those as well, because I think that's just really, really commonly associated.
Yeah, I want to ask you questions about anxiety. There are different kinds, right, Corrina, of anxiety. So talk to me about the different kinds and what are the ones that are directly connected to self-doubt? Or would you say all of them or some of them?
I would say most of them. The biggest one that I hear about a lot is social anxiety.
Right.
And that's what I had a lot of. And that's because, that social anxiety kind of plays into our imposter syndrome and wondering if people are thinking that we're some sort of fraud or, other people looking at us or judging us. And that kind of all develops into self-doubt. But also anxieties about going and doing things, anxieties that are triggered by little things, there's a lot of different types of, I used to have panic attacks just at home by myself. And I think a lot of it was caused by my chronic insomnia at the time. So some of it is very physical, and some of it is very emotional. And as we know, those are very tightly connected. But it's, you have to kind of decide or figure out what is causing it in order to figure out how to help yourself. And sometimes some of the techniques, talk about things that you can physically do to help with those.
When I think about anxiety, I think about fear, but then you just mentioned one type of anxiety that I didn't think about, which is the one coming from insomnia, not sleeping well, and then the body automatically acts the brain in a certain way. So would you say that most anxieties are triggered by fear, unconscious fear?
Yeah, I would say a lot of anxiety and depression is connected to a sense of dwelling. So if you're dwelling on your fear, if you're dwelling on something that's going to happen in the future, that's a lot of anxiety. A lot of depression, you're dwelling on things that happened in the past. You're dwelling on things about yourself that you don't like. You're dwelling on these negative things. And fear is a huge factor. And we always think of fear as being something bad. And it's not, if you can kind of reframe your perspective, sometimes you can think, okay, I'm not scared, I'm excited, because your body has this very similar reaction to both. And so it's your body trying to help you be at your prime ability, your heart's going to race a little more, you're going to be breathing more, and if you can kind of control that and see that happening in your body, you can help to use that extra energy that is created to actually have it help you instead of hurt you.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Utilizing the energies and not judging them to be negative automatically just because the way they manifest. Like you said, healing has a lot to do with the mind. You cannot heal really the body if the mind's not connected or it's not in alignment with what we want. And then let me see other topics that you talk. I love the way you talk about that happiness. And I think gratitude too, you mentioned, should be taught in schools.
Yeah, so I gave a TED talk and it was that, why gratitude should be taught in schools. And it's just, there's a lot of these things, a lot of techniques in this book that include gratitude. And I feel like if I had learned these things when I was a child, then I would have been better prepared for all of the, curveballs life threw me. And perhaps it wouldn't have been so difficult to get through these things. And I wouldn't have had to deal with the, suicidal thoughts that I had during that time of being so sick, things like that. I wonder if a lot of our societal problems, even like bullying, the anxiety, depression, addiction, a lot of these things are connected. And I wonder if we learned some of these very simple techniques growing up, if we could help that.
Oh, that would be so great. Have you tried to approach the school systems?
I was going to right before COVID, I was going to give birth. And then a few months after that, I was going to reach out. And that's when COVID hit. So I'll be doing that soon.
Yes. Yeah. That's the way to do it. I agree. We need to have more not just knowledge, but actually wisdom, because a lot of the techniques you mentioned in the book has a lot to do with self-awareness, self-knowledge. So it's not just about absorbing information and leaving at the intellectual level, but kind of seeing that, as you call it, energies flowing within the body and kind of working with ourselves as children doing that. Are you teaching your children? How are they doing with those practices?
Well, so my son, he's only 17 months old. And so, but I've already taught him how to do deep breathing. Oh, wow. And so he, if he's kind of throwing a bit of a tantrum or doesn't want something, or I'll sit him down and we'll talk, and then we'll both do some deep breathing, and he'll do the deep breathing and calm himself down. And it's really amazing that he's already, doing that. So, so it's been really great. And he's an amazing little boy. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he grows up.
Yeah, that'll be fun for you to watch, right? The development.
Yep.
And we're almost at the end, and I have so many questions here for you, Corrina, way too many. But let me see. So the practices, you have so many. It's really rich and generous, your book. And I love the learning to say no. That's a whole chapter you have, a section you have there. It's something that I need. So I focused on it. And the way you talk about guilt, we already mentioned that. And decision-making. You said something interesting about making decisions. Decision-making, it's easier when we are calm. So that's another reason to kind of establish that state of calmness so we can make better choices. And you have lots of tips. You call them general tips. Some of the ones that caught my attention. Actually, I would like to ask you this one. You said the week, month, year test. Talk to me about that practice.
So I realized at one point that with my anxiety, especially, and relationships too, was a big thing for this, is that you think about, first, is this a crisis? Okay. Whether or not whatever is happening that's kind of triggering you is a crisis. And then you think, am I going to worry about this, or am I going to even remember this or have a problem with this in a week or a month or a year? So a year from now, whatever's happening that's making you so nervous or angry or frustrated or whatever it is that has a negative emotion, are you, a year from now, is it still going to be important? Are you still going to be holding on to that? And if not, then is it as important as you really feel like it is in the moment? It might not be. If within only a week, you might not even be focusing on it, then it's really probably not something you should be overreacting to. So it works really well with relationships, and, if any sort of relationship, so it could be a brother and sister, it could be, parent, could be your spouse, whatever. If they do something that kind of bothers you, hold back for a minute and think critically, is this going to bother, should I speak up? Should I say something that could cause an argument? Let's see. Is this going to bother me in a week or a month or a year? Okay, let's decide, pick our battles.
Right, because it has to do with values, right? If it's something that's deep down our core value, then it will bother us, at any time, for sure.
And if it's anything that's going to keep bothering you a year from now, then you definitely need to address it.
Talk to me for a moment about intuition, Corrina.
I think everybody has their intuition and at different levels. Yeah. And I think it's really important to kind of hone your intuition. And a lot of my doctors, and I've had a lot of them, they all say by the end of the first meeting, wow, you seem really in tune with your body. You seem, and I think that's a lot of intuition too, right? Is kind of that ability to focus, that ability to think about different consequences of what might happen and sort of internalize that and make decisions. I think intuition is very critical for making decisions, but I also think it can be muddled when you're really anxious, because sometimes you think something is a bad idea, and it might be that intuition feeling, but it could be just your anxiety kind of masquerading and saying, keeping you from wanting to do whatever it is. So the calmer you are, the more I think you can trust your intuition.
True. Yeah. It goes back to that state of quietude. Yeah. And listening to oneself. Is that the best practice for you has been meditation? Or do you have other, besides walking in nature and being around nature?
Right. Walking is really great. And I try to do some active meditation when I'm walking, focus on my breathing, things like that. It's really good for people who can't sit still, right? It's this kind of active meditation as well, at least to get you started. And I think meditation's been really good. I think positive affirmations, things like I am strong, I am important, I am worthy, I am capable. All these things, I think it's really important to say those to yourself every day. It's a huge confidence booster. Even if you're not really feeling those things at the moment, when you say them, it just triggers your brain to think more like that. And I think it's really been critical. And just taking the time to move slowly, not always be in a rush. Taking that time to just, walk leisurely or, give myself extra time to get ready so that I'm not rushing. Because when I rush, I just get anxious.
Yeah.
And then I feel worse about myself.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's all connected.
Why do you think so many people are so petrified of failure? What are some of the reasons?
I think it goes back to that social anxiety as well. And just that we're social beings and we care about what other people think. And we don't understand when we see a very limited amount of what other people do and think and say. And we tend to see a lot of the best of them, right? Social media is, typically everybody's best photo and everybody's best moments. And, so we're all, of course, showing what we think is our best selves because that's what we want people to see. But then we forget that, everybody has a behind the curtains side that is struggling just as much as you are or we are, or, and everybody, especially after this year of 2020, I think people are really struggling with anxiety and depression and self-doubt in ways that they maybe haven't before. And I think the thought of failure is that it just proves that you're not good enough, but it's really, it's critical in order to succeed. There's nobody that doesn't fail, and none of us are good at something right away, as frustrating as that is. And even for things like this interview, I get nervous and stuff to do my speeches or workshops or my interviews. And I think beforehand to myself, if I fail, if I sort of bomb this interview, what's the worst that would happen? What's the worst that would happen? And it's not, it could be bad, but it's not going to be a life-changing, horrible event, and we all learn from it. So if I stutter, or do anything like that, I can learn from that for the next one. I can learn from anything, and I think that's really important, is to trust yourself and to know that no matter what happens, if you fail or succeed, you're going to learn from anything.
Right.
And being willing to see what lesson is in there.
Oh, I love that message of being compassionate. That's vulnerable. It's very important.
Yes.
That's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to make mistakes. And you talk in the book about practices. You say practice makes better, not perfect.
Right. I don't like the word perfect.
Yeah, me too. Because there's no such a thing. You see that in nature. Right. It's so amazing. Everything's so different and imperfect, but at the same time, so incredibly magical and beautiful. So we can never judge nature. I don't think so. No.
Well,
some people might do, but
I think our differences are what make us so interesting. So the fact that, this person has a crooked tooth or that, I don't think it matters. I think all of these different things about us and our different experiences that create our different perspectives are really what make us unique.
And we're almost at the end now. Before I ask you my final questions, would you like to add anything or read a passage in your book?
Let's see. I guess, yeah, I'll read a short passage.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's from chapter 18. It's part of what we already sort of talked about. It's just, let's see. Self-doubt isn't typically something that happens by itself. It's usually accompanied, if not outright caused by, depression and or anxiety. Here's something to remember. Depression and anxiety are not part of you. Let me say that again. Depression and anxiety are not actually a part of you. They're not personality traits. They don't define you. They're not integral to your state of being. They're more like leeches that have attached themselves to you, and you walk around feeling like they've become a part of you because you can't get them off. Meanwhile, they continue to suck the life out of you.
It goes back to this courage to understand, to listen to ourselves more.
Right. And this whole book is really about, who would you be and what would your life be like if you didn't have the baggage of your anxiety and depression and self-doubt?
What was the hardest lesson to learn, Corrina, about yourself in life as of today?
Hardest lesson? Wow, there's so many hard lessons. Yeah. That's a tricky question. Guilt pops up to mind very quickly because it was just so overbearing. It was just overwhelming amount of guilt that I have struggled with, and trying when you're so sick that you can't even get yourself food. You're relying on people so much to survive, and you can't. I was stuck in bed, but I couldn't even read or watch television really. So what was I supposed to do? I literally felt like a kind of a waste of space. And I think it took me a long time to realize that I still had value, and that, I was going to get through that, and that, the people around me still loved me despite those challenges, and that I could continue to move forward and find purpose in my life.
2 more questions. We talked about this, living this life with no regrets. So if you knew you would die soon, meaning leaving the body, would you make any change or do anything in a different way?
I think about this sometimes, and I'm not sure that I would change very much. I think I try to live each day to the fullest. I always try to say I love you to the people that are around me when I say goodbye, specifically for that reason. And I think if I knew I was going to die, I'd probably leave a recording, just to make sure that that I had my kind of final goodbye. Yeah. But other than that, I think I try to live my life as best I can, moment to moment, and without the regrets. So I do what I can, and I think I would still kind of do that.
So my last question is, what are 3 things about life you know for sure as of this moment?
Oh, there's a lot of sarcastic things come to mind. But now 3 things I know about life. Life is unpredictable. Yeah. I've been thrown a lot of curveballs. I thought I had my life kind of planned out, and that went completely off the rails. I think life is going to force you to adapt. I think adaptation is really key to success in any form. And being able to adapt to any sort of situation or thing that's thrown your way is really key. And the third, I think life is really, one of the most important things in life is love. I think the people around us, that connection, I think love for yourself, love for your pets, love for, anything of your interests, and love for people, for the people around you is really crucial to a happy, healthy life.
Thank you so much, Corrina, again, for your presence, your wisdom, your beautiful, inspirational work, and you just being you. It's just a beautiful thing. I can't stop saying that because it is beautiful. Yeah, really.
Thank you so much.
And before we say goodbye, where can we find more information about you, your books, products, services, and future projects?
You can go and find all of it on my website, which is just www.CorrinaThurston.com. So it's CorrinaThurston. INATHURSTON.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye for now, Corrina.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Corrina Thurston and her work, please visit CorrinaThurston.com. To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.